everyone, I'm Joanna Penn from thecreativepenn.com, and today I'm here with Will Dages. Hi, Will.
Hello.
It's good to have you on the show. Just a little introduction. Will is head of product for Findaway Voices and an avid audiobook listener. He's been immersed in the audiobook industry for 7 years and working on everything from technology to marketing to product development. So Will, tell us a bit more about you and how you got into audiobook stuff and why you love audio so much.
Yeah, thank you. Great question. So it turns out when I was a kid in middle school, I loved reading, and I was reading 20 novels a year. Just couldn't get enough. And then at some point in school, I had to start reading books that I didn't want to read, and that just killed the love of reading for me. So I became a non-reader for many years until, I still remember this, the day I graduated from college. I was like, I finally have the time to read what I want to read. And I picked it back up, and it was like the floodgates open and years of pent-up reading energy flowed out. And audiobooks are the way that today I can still read as many books as I want. I read 50, 60 audiobooks a year now, listen to them. And so audiobooks are the way that I can fill up my commute with that and get as much as I want to listen to in.
Yeah, and so why did you go into it as a career?
Well, I actually found my way to Findaway through means of development. So I went to school for video production, actually, and I did some voiceover work back then. And I kind of got bored with it at the end of college. And instead of switching majors, I said, okay, I'm just going to finish the degree and I'm going to teach myself what I really want to do, which was programming. So I built a couple iOS apps and played around there. And then I started building websites and loved that. And then I ended up getting into Findaway as a UX developer and helping them build websites, basically. And then I did that for a couple of years, and then I moved into some more experimental roles, and I helped launch a product called Duobook, which is one app that lets you read and listen at the same time. It syncs the audiobook and the ebook together, and then if you want to switch formats, it's always in the right spot. And from there, I had so much fun with that, launching the new products, getting customer feedback, and iterating on it, that when Findaway Voices came around as the newest product from Findaway, I raised my hand. I said, ooh, me. I want to be a part of this. This sounds like fun. And here I am.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic. And I love your enthusiasm. I do want us to tackle the read/listen word because, it's unbelievable how, to me, it's a brain, right? How it gets into the brain doesn't really matter. But how do you address this? I'm reading a book through audio or I'm listening to a book. Some people say, oh, well, it's not really reading.
Yeah, personally, I think that's ridiculous. And it's up to personal preference, right? And no one should tell you how you want to read or listen. If you get the most out of the audiobooks or even not maybe the full potential, right? If some science comes out and they say, oh, well, you only absorb 90% of the information that you would have if you read. Who cares? You've still gotten the 90%. So to me, I could never read 60 books a year if audiobooks weren't part of my life. And so that whole debate of is listening really reading is just it's a nothing question for me because it's all about personal preference, and I get enough out of it that I don't really care what what the general consensus is.
I think it's a misinformation campaign by people who are invested in print publishing. That's what I think it is.
Could be.
It's shame people. It's a bit like how romance reading has been treated by some people in the past. You have to hide it or whatever. But no, I think in this community, we're kind of read however you like. We love you. We love you reading. But you and I met at NINC and we geeked out on audio stuff, which is why I'm talking to you now. But many of the listeners, and although I talk about it a lot on this show, I think it's worth talking about the current state of the market. Because again, I talk to many Americans and they might only know Audible, for example. So can you give us a state of play in the audiobook market right now and the big players in America, but also the rest of the world? Big question, I know, but just a big overview.
No, it's good. It's good. Yeah. So for a lot of people, Audible is synonymous with audiobook. You'll even hear some people say, oh, I got an Audible. Oh, actually, that's not called an audiobook. But Audible is a huge player in the industry, and they've paved the way for making audiobooks as popular as they are. So everybody owes a ton of credit to Audible for making the audiobook industry what it is, especially in the US. So in Audible, the way you buy an audiobook is generally you pay $15 a month and you get a token. And you get to exchange that token for any book that you want in the catalog. or you can just buy it outright. But the vast majority of purchases are happening based on this credit subscription model where you get a credit, you're subscribing, you get one every month, and then you choose whatever audiobook you want. There's actually a lot of other ways to buy audiobooks. So Google, Apple, Kobo, Nook, they all do the a la carte. This is where I pay a bit of money and I have a license to that audiobook. I've just paid outright for it, and now it's in my library forever. There's also unlimited subscription partners. Think of this as like a Netflix model where maybe you're paying $10, $15 a month and you get access to listening to as much as you want, or listening and reading, right? This is Scribd, Playster, HiBooks, services like that, where you get access to the entire catalog. And it might be a more limited catalog. You might not get, the top tier audiobooks, and you might not find every single audiobook you want there, but it's unlimited listening, for lack of a better term. And then there's also libraries. So libraries are big in the audiobook space. We have 12 library partners that we distribute to right now. And libraries buy books in two ways. One, the librarian curates the catalog. They buy it once, and then just like a physical item that sits on the shelf, one person's allowed to check it out at a time, and they're allowed to go patron to patron to patron and basically circulate it forever. The other way is actually a more innovative way. We'll talk about this more, I bet, which is kind of the Netflix model in a library. So this is we call this cost per checkout model, where the library patrons have access to every book in the catalog. It's not curated by the librarian. Instead, it's merchandised by the librarian, right? So the patron can find any book they want. And every time they download it or check it out, then the author gets paid a small fee, not super small, a buck or two, as opposed to maybe your library list price is $15, $30, something like that. And that's really opening up the library market to some really fun things for authors to do direct patron marketing and saying, hey, go check out my audiobook at the library. It's free to the customer, which is a really easy thing to market to them. And you get paid every time they listen. So there's a lot of different ways to buy audiobooks right now. And there's even more experimentation happening with some other, I don't want to say smaller models, but some other models that have yet to be proven.
Well, also we were talking about StoryTell, which is also, and probably even Google Play would be the bigger players outside of the dominant Audible space. So could you just maybe comment on those companies as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So, if you're in the US, Audible, but it's actually surprising how few countries Audible operates in. And so StoryTell, who you mentioned, StoryTell has done some really smart things. So they are finding the countries that Audible is not in, and they're going after those countries really aggressively. And they're starting new markets for books that have never really existed before, right? And if you think of a country that has primarily consumed books with paperbacks and hardcovers, and now they're moving to digital for the first time. It's much easier to say, use the phone you already have than go buy this e-reader tablet. And when people are consuming a book on their phone, are they going to want to listen? Or are they going to want to read an ebook on their phone? And that's why audiobooks, obviously the answer is audiobooks. If you ask me, it's much better experience to listen than to read on a phone. And so they're really establishing these audio first digital book markets, and they're doing it really aggressively and having really strong performance. So StoryTell is really the big one internationally, and we just launched with them. We're really excited to get authors' audiobooks on StoryTell and see how that goes, because they're just expanding into tons of countries and they're doing some really cool stuff.
Yeah, and that is, as we discussed, that's the primary reason I was like, yeah, I'm coming with you guys because you're doing this partnership. But also, there's been a lot coming out of CES in the last few weeks about Google Assistant being in so many things. And of course, they've said it's on something like 9 billion devices because of the phones. So do you think Google content, because of course you distribute to Google Play as well, do you think Google Play audiobooks will become a bigger force internationally because of the assistant model? It's like, hey Google, play me an audiobook, and it will default to a Google Play.
Yeah, I think there's a ton of potential there because of that. It's amazing that you can buy an audiobook through Google. You say, hey, Google, buy my book, right? Hey, Google, buy How to Write Nonfiction by Joanna Penn. Every time you walk into someone's house, you should just say that out loud and wonder if they have a Google device, because boom, there's a sale, right? So the ease of that transaction is going to be really, really powerful. I mean, if you think of even the way Audible works is you kind of you get your credit, you have to go to the website, you have to redeem it on the website, then you go back to the app. There's a lot of friction there. as opposed to just on Apple and Google, you just click a button, you pay, it's done, it's in your library. Using your voice is even easier and more impulsive. And I think that that's going to lead to a lot of potential for lowering the friction on sales, and then, as a result, increasing sales dramatically.
Yeah, so exciting. We're going to circle back to kind of futurist stuff. So I wanted to talk about Findaway Voices again because your tagline, like, you get me at your tagline, which is take back your freedom. And I mean, freedom is like my number one value. Freedom is why I'm an author entrepreneur. It's why I do what I do. So like I love your tagline. So tell us why use that tagline, and how can people think about freedom in terms of audiobooks, and how is it different to using a service like ACX?
Sure. Great question. So I'm glad you love the tagline. We love it too. It's all about giving control to the author, right? So the most obvious one that everybody thinks of first is this price control thing, right? So when you submit an audiobook to ACX, you don't get to set what your list price is. They determine what the price should be. They determine what they're going to sell it for. If Audible wants to discount the book to whatever, they do it. They don't ask anybody. And that's different in Findaway Voices. So we're the wide distribution option. We're the place you go if you want your audiobook in every audiobook retailer in the world, including Audible, right? I don't want to discount that. We do send to Audible. Now, when you distribute through us, you get to set two list prices. You get to set your retail list price and your library list price. And with every retailer that we send to, except for Audible, those list prices are how your royalties are paid. So if we say you're getting a 45% royalty, it's off the list price that you set. Doesn't matter what the retailer wants to sell it for. They could sell it higher or lower. If you set it as $15, you're making 45% of that $15. Beyond pricing, there's also promotion control. So we're offering the ability to have the little slash through the price and say, it was $15, now it's $12, or now it's $10. That kind of pricing control has not really existed in audiobooks before, or the audiobook market is very young when it comes to promotion pricing, and it's not as easy to get the promotion. So we're exposing that to authors. We're also doing things like letting you really have fine control over your metadata, your release schedule. If you want to future date a release date and say, well, this is going to go live in 6 weeks, you can submit it now with a future dated release date, and it won't be live on most retailers. Some retailers ignore it, but most retailers do respect that release date, and they'll hold it and embargo it until that date. We're pushing on vendors for more pre-order support, more price control, more fine-grained price control. A lot of the promotion windows are 30 days at a time. So you set your promotion price for the entirety of June, and not June 1st to June 3rd or something like that. So we're pushing for more control and giving these levers to authors. And we don't have the perfect formula for how to maximize the sales yet, but we're giving everybody the control and the freedom to experiment. And we know that people will figure it out and figure out how to maximize that. And once there is a standard formula, we'll pass it on to everybody. And that first round of authors will be on to the next tier. There's a lot of money to be had for whoever figures out how to pull these levers in the right way first.
Oh, yeah. Going to come back to discoverability. But so just be clear on whether, so an author is already on ACX and they want to use Findaway. How can they do that? How can they, like, some people might think, oh, do I have to be all in with you and I can't do anything else? Or how can you combine both of those? Or what are the options there?
Great question. And another reason to plug freedom, because there's another place where we give more control, which is awesome. So I want to say there's two scenarios that you can be in if you're with Audible right now. One, you could be on Audible exclusivity, right? So when you go to Audible, you have two choices. You can go exclusive with Audible and make a 40% royalty, or you can go non-exclusive with Audible and you can make a 25% royalty. So that 15% split for such a huge player in the market is a big deal to a lot of people. And so a lot of people have chosen exclusivity, probably before we existed and they didn't know about us. I totally understand. But if you are exclusive with Audible, it's a 7-year contract, and that means you cannot use us. So if your book is exclusive with Audible, you cannot use Findaway Voices for that title. It's title by title.
Well, I would say if you have been in that exclusivity for 1 year, you can request to move to a non-exclusive. So I've now requested 3 of my books will come out this year that I'll be able to do to take them wide. So if you've done 1 year of your 7 years, you can get out.
That's right. There is a loophole, but that only works if you didn't do the royalty share,
yes,
right? So
exactly.
Now we're getting really deep in here, but there's another option where if you can pay nothing up front for your audiobook production and split the royalties with your narrator for 7 years. In that case, the narrator took no payment up front, and they're relying on those 7 years of royalties to make up that difference, right? And so it's not fair to get out of exclusivity, lower the rate on the narrator. So you do have to fill out the full 7 years in the royalty share instance. But yes, if you did not do royalty share, if you paid for the production, after 1 year, you can request to go non-exclusive, and then you can bring the audiobook to us. So once you're non-exclusive, you can go to Findaway Voices, upload your audiobooks, and you'll see a page with a huge amount of logos, right? and this is all the places that we're going to send your audiobook. And if you drill it down, you can see a checkbox list, and you can check or uncheck any partner in that list. So if you want to continue going direct to ACX, you can just uncheck that one. Maybe you want to go under, maybe you don't like a business model, right? Maybe you are philosophically opposed to libraries, which I think you're missing out on a lot of money there. But there's some people who really don't want their book in libraries. And it's totally fine to uncheck all the library partners and just keep the retail ones. And we will only send your book to the options that you check. So Findaway Voices is not an all or nothing. We give you fine-grained control as far as where your audiobook is sold as well.
And I really like that. So basically at this point, I've got my latest sort of the last couple of years, I've done just paid narrators outright. So I own all the rights, and I've gone non-exclusive. So I've put those books on, as you know. I'm waiting for some of them to hit the 1 year mark for the ones I'd already paid but are in-exclusive. And then I've got a lot that are royalty split. So those ones I'll just have to wait. But this is, we're in this for the long game. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm waiting, and I've got all the dates, and I would just sort it out once we get there. But this is really an interesting thing. I also wanted to ask you about selling direct, because I've sold direct audio for nearly 10 years. I've just done downloadable MP3s that people can buy and listen to, but obviously people now are not you. I don't even think people know half the time how to download an MP3 and get it on their phone. It's like they might not use Dropbox or another app to kind of sync. So you have to help them, and it's all technical, and it's a right pain in the neck. So how do we sell direct audio with Findaway?
Yeah, so we're trying to tackle this problem as well. So we launched a platform last year that's still in beta right now, as of the recording, and it's called Authors Direct. So this is a way for authors to sell their audiobooks directly to consumers. And we help with a couple things. One, we help with the listening experience, making sure that the listener's experience is up to par with what they're expecting from a world-class audiobook player, right? So it's not just open the MP3 on your phone and you get the play bar that's great for music controls, right? Or short audiobooks. But as soon as you're getting into the 2-3 hour range, and maybe it's split into 4 or 5 commutes, and you have to use the scrubber bar to find out where you were and remember the time code. And, I want to go back 15 seconds to hear that again. There's no controls for that, or no sleep timers, no speed control. All these things that people expect from a good audiobook player is just not there. So we've built a fantastic listening app. This is what I use quite a bit, is Authors Direct, and we have an internal one for testing that we use. And it's a great playback experience. So you can when you sell the audiobook, your listener will have a good experience. The other thing that we help out with from the author's perspective is taxes, right? Selling audiobooks is not easy to do from a tax perspective. So we are the merchant of record for all the transactions, not the author. And so we will take care of all the tax reporting and the payment fee transactions, because processing a credit card is not free to the retailer. So we take care of that. And we also take care of customer service. So like you said, it can be a pain in the neck, right? When you're sending an MP3 to somebody, you probably send them a PDF or some instructions, and they may or may not read it. And they're going to reach out to you and say, hey, I paid $10 for this audiobook. I can't play it. You got to help me. So Findaway takes care of all of that as well through the Authors Direct platform. Now, when your book is for sale on Authors Direct, we're kind of like a retailer in that we're taking care of all these things, but we're not like a retailer at all in that we're not promoting the audiobook. We're not driving traffic. There's no discoverability on Authors Direct. That's the author's job, okay? So the author is responsible for driving all of their traffic to the website to purchase, and then they get the great listening experience, they get the customer support, they get everything. In exchange for that, the author makes 85% royalties. So that is a massive increase over the next highest retailer in the market, which is 50%, right? Now, Findaway Voices takes 20% of the 85%. So it ends up being about 70% royalties take home for the author. So when you're buying ad dollars, you're pushing people to this site, you're making 70 cents on the dollar when it's all said and done. And that's a much better ROI than on any other retailer. So we're hoping to help make the direct sales experience a lot better for authors and try to get a lot of the experimentation that we want, that we want from retailers, that we want from vendors, this fine-grained, I want 3 days of price promotion here. All of that stuff, we're using Authors Direct as our test bed for that and to show other retailers and vendors what can be done when authors have that much control. So it's a limited beta. We're testing it with 15, 20, we might be up to 30 people now. And we're going to keep opening up that wider and wider. And we plan on opening it up for every Findaway Voices customer at some point.
When you say at some point, are we talking 2019 or 2020?
I hope so. I think it's going to happen in 2019. We're still working out some bugs. We're still figuring out how to most efficiently manage the customer service as we've seen the transactions scale like crazy. And we want to make sure that we don't overload our team so that we can continue to give the best listener experience to the customers. Because if it fails, we don't want to be the reason. We don't want the listening experience, that thing that we're taking our cut for, to be the reason it fails. So we want to make sure that we do it right, and we're working out all the bugs still.
I mean, having worked in software as well, I know bugs happen. But I think, as you said, this is a younger industry. And so this is kind of, I guess, what BookFunnel has enabled people to do with ebooks and, providing this separate. So that's fantastic. So let's just talk about cost to produce. So you've talked a bit about pricing. One of the big barriers to entry for authors is the price of creating an audiobook. And I've found myself, I have an audio platform for nonfiction with this podcast. So I sell a lot of nonfiction and I make good money on my nonfiction, whereas my fiction takes longer to pay back the investment, which is why I'm starting another podcast. So I can maybe try and, speed up that process from audio to audiobook. If you're on your phone and you like someone on a podcast, you might be more likely to click a button to check out their audiobook. So that's my kind of sneaky marketing for fiction audio. But tell us a bit about cost to produce versus profits and timelines that it might take.
Sure. So the cost to produce an audiobook is generally based on the per finished hour rate, right? So the longer the audiobook and the better the narrator, the more expensive it's going to be. We see most audiobooks in the $1,500 range, right? So this is for like a 6 to 8 hour audiobook at maybe $150, $200 per finished hour. So you're laying out that $1,500, call it, or $2,000 for a round number, $2,000 at the start of it, and you want to make that back, and we want you to make that back, right? So I'm going to take a quick tangent here. The way Findaway Voices makes money is that 20% fee on the distribution, right? So when you make money, we make money. You keep 80%, we keep 20%. So our incentives are aligned. We want you to sell books as much as everybody else. We want you to recoup so that you make more books and have more and more to sell. As far as how soon you make it back, that has varied wildly based on a lot of factors, like the quality of the audiobook, the amount of effort you're willing to put into marketing it, right? I don't know what episode this is of the Creative Penn, but you have put a massive amount of time and effort into building this platform, and all of that investment pays off when you release another nonfiction audiobook, and you're going to make those back a lot faster than somebody else who hasn't put in that amount of time, right? So it's all about the caveat being, if you get an Audible feature or if you get on the Apple carousel, that can all change overnight, right? All your dreams are coming true then. But you can't rely on that. Good business people don't rely on that luck to happen. They work for it. And going wide requires a lot of work in marketing. So to address the point that you said about cost being the biggest barrier of entry for somebody trying to make an audiobook or wanting to make an audiobook, totally agree. We've heard that feedback a lot. And we're launching a new program this year called Voices Share. And you can think of this as a kind of hybrid royalty share program. Think of it as a half price audiobook. So you're going to pay half the price up front. That means the narrator gets some bulk payment up front, probably half their rate. and then they're going to take a smaller than 50% cut of your royalties ongoing. So they have ongoing upside for many years afterwards. They're still able to pay the bills. They don't have to just take a complete risk on something. And we're launching that this year to help lower the cost of audiobooks and help get more and more authors able to produce.
Oh, I like that. I really like that, because I think that's almost much fairer, because I feel like some of the lovely narrators who've done royalty splits, at the beginning there was a rush into that with ACX, and then a lot of them I don't think made enough money. So a lot of indies are finding it harder to work with narrators for royalty share deals, because you kind of have to already prove sales. So this would be kind of halfway there. So that's really interesting. And of course, Findaway Voices helps authors find a narrator, doesn't it, as well? Just like ACX, you can find narrators. You can find narrators with you guys.
Yeah, I'd like to think it's far easier than ACX. So the fundamental difference on the production side between us and ACX is an open marketplace, right? Mm-hmm. This is like you're searching for a hotel on Airbnb, and you're going through all the filters, and you're looking through the maps and trying to find the perfect one. Where Findaway Voices is like Stitch Fix. So I'm using this analogy for the first time, but
I don't know what Stitch Fix is.
Okay, so Stitch Fix is a company that learns all about you, and they assign you a personal stylist, and then it's one of those monthly boxes, right? So the box shows up, and here's the perfect set of clothes for you, or the perfect outfit tailored to you from a stylist. So they do all the curation work for you, and that's what we do. So we curate these selections. When an audiobook project comes in, we ask a whole bunch of questions, like a big dating profile. We'll try to learn as much as we can about the type of the audiobook, what you're imagining the feel being. Is there a sound alike with a celebrity? We ask 20 questions about the audiobook, and then it goes to a human casting team. We have a fantastic casting team that onboards all of our narrators, so they're really intimately familiar with what all of our narrators can do. We're up to 1,500 or so now that are fully onboarded. And then we present you with 5 to 10 top choices. So we kind of zoom you right to the semifinal round. And now instead of listening to 80,000 samples and dealing with sliders for many hours, you're just listening to samples from 5, 10 narrators. And that narrows the field quite a bit. It uses our expertise in what we think would be a great narrator for your project to help leverage that expertise for first-timers who have no idea what to listen to sometimes. We have a lot of people come to Findaway Voice and say, I've never heard an audiobook. How can I be expected to produce a good one? I say, oh, that's what we're here for. We can help with that. We love audiobooks. So the casting process really zooms you to the semifinal round, and from there we do free auditions for any of the narrators in that list that you want, and you get to hear your words in their voice. And then you get to hear your top 2, top 3, as many as you want, head to head before you make the decision who to use. So we hope that you feel really comfortable and excited about the narrator by the time you're ready to lay down that commitment for the $1,500, $2,000, because that is a lot of money. And we want to make sure everybody feels really excited about it.
Yeah. Okay, so we do have to address the elephant in the room, which is, yes, you can create a fantastic audiobook, but how do you actually make some money? How do you sell it? So one of the things that is basic around ebooks and print is the metadata. And I know you do give control of metadata, but for example, there's still only one category. There's no keywords as such. There's no, there's no bookbub for audiobooks, although getting a bookbub does actually drive audiobook sales, obviously. But talk a bit about tips for marketing audiobooks and what some of the best-selling audiobook authors are doing.
Sure. So I'm going to start with the first tip's going to be the most basic, obvious one ever, which is the cover art, right? The cover art matters so much for the marketability of the book. And with audiobooks, covers are square. Covers are square because back in the day, audiobooks were sold on CDs, and CD cases were square, and that has carried through
I didn't know.
all the way to today. And so if you bring your ebook cover, which is decidedly not square, it's usually 4x3, and you just slap it in the square container and have it letterboxed on the side, it doesn't look good. And I can tell you, all of our best-selling titles on Findaway Voices have great-looking square formatted cover art. So it's worth the investment to make sure that you have high-quality cover art, because it matters a lot. The other thing I want to bring up, you did mention quickly BookBub, and how BookBub and Written Word Media, the Free Booksy, Bargain Booksy, those things don't have dedicated audio offerings. but they do matter to audiobooks because anytime you get a BookBub for your ebook, that visibility is going to spike your audiobook sales as well. Personally, I subscribe to BookBub and I get a deal every day. And if there's something I want to, I'll see it on there and I'll go look for it on audio. And that's another reason. It leads nicely to another tip, which is simultaneous release. I think one of the best things you can do for your audiobook marketing is try to hit a simultaneous release. So the same day that your audiobook and your paperback or print on demand, your ebook is released, that your audiobook is also available. Because that's the one day, the launch day. You've been doing all these plans. You've got all this marketing ready to go. Launch day is the day where you're going to have the most attention, the most eyeballs, the most ads running, the most relevant conversation happening. And people will see your book and they will go look for it on audio. And if it's not there, they're probably just going to forget about it. There are some ways to do really effective staggered launches where you have the ebook today, the audiobook after a month, and then maybe book 2 of the series after that, and book 2 of the audiobook after that. If you leverage a lot of touch points with your audience, right? If you don't have enough to say on Facebook, maybe having a separate launch to just announce some more good news is a good thing. But when audio is thought of as an afterthought, all the book launch marketing goes into this one moment. And then the audiobook comes out and it's out there, but you don't really do as much for it. That's what really hurts your audiobook sales more than anything. So we see the way around that is simultaneous release, is making sure it's part of the release strategy, the bigger strategy when the most buzz is hitting. Simultaneous release is really the biggest thing you can do to boost your audiobook sales right at the beginning.
Really good point. And I know I have not done this yet. And because, most indies will finish the ebook, get it edited, but then they'll upload it. And we're so used to things being available fast. Whereas the audiobook process, you upload an audiobook, the process is very easy at Findaway and at ACX. It's very easy. But then it takes a couple of weeks and you don't really know exactly when it's going to come out. It's very hard. Plus, if you hired a narrator, you have to wait till the book's finished. So I get what you're saying. And the challenge, I think, challenging everyone listening and myself, is to start thinking more like a traditional publisher I say that a lot of them are not doing simultaneous release.
In this way.
A lot
are.
Yeah, a lot are. So kind of plan it. Don't rush things out, wait until all the formats are together. The other thing I see now a lot in the UK, I'm sure it's in America too, is the audio first, or the Audible audio exclusive. So you're actually saying, look, you can actually get it on audio before you get it on ebook and print. Is that something you're seeing?
I haven't seen as much experimentation with that as I would like to, because I think it's a really compelling offering. But the downside of simultaneous release, right, is my ebook's ready. It could be selling today, but I'm holding on to it, and that hurts. And I get it. I totally get it. But we're seeing a couple authors experiment with shorter books or interludes. Maybe you have a 5-book series, and they're going to start releasing little stories that happen in between the books in the series, and maybe these are just 30 minutes or an hour, and they'll do those audio only. And they'll see, okay, well, I have a really strong ebook readership. Can I convert them to audio when audio is the only way they can hear more about this character I know they love? And they're using that to test conversion rates between formats. But as far as a big release going audio first, I haven't seen as much of that as I want to. If you, dear listener, are interested in experimenting with it, reach out. We'd love to help you plan that and help you really get a success story there, because I'd love to have more examples of where that's working really well.
And I also want to. Sorry.
Oh yeah, I just want to go back a little bit, because you mentioned the timeline, and that is kind of important when you're thinking about simultaneous release. The average audiobook production from start to finish can be 4 to 6 weeks. That's a lot of time, right? And then when you hit the distribute button, it can be another 10 to 14 days before it's actually live on distributors. So keep that timeline in mind. It isn't like the ebook world where you hit submit and then you refresh the page on the retailer and boom, it's there. The audiobook market does move a lot slower. Part of that is, we have gigabytes and gigabytes of files to move across a whole bunch of different places. And the audiobook market and retailers just aren't as fast, for lack of a better term, as the ebook market is.
Yeah, no, I get that. And then just what about that metadata issue? Because it frustrates me that, I mean, I don't, and I also find like the Audible store is terrible. And in fact, I normally, if I buy an audiobook, I'll go to, say, amazon.co.uk, find the ebook or the print book, and then look for the audio version rather than going onto Audible. So, and the category thing annoys me because I write cross-genre, as do many people listening, and I don't like just having one category. I want more categories, I want keywords, I want more metadata. So do you think that's a possibility in the future?
I think it is. We're pushing a lot of retailers to get better and better with that, as well as, first in category. Let's have some rankings here. Let's have some things that you can show off when you hit a top 10 list. I don't know of any audiobook retailer today that has those kind of rankings and lists, or deep support for really customizable categories. A lot of it is just based on BISAC code. Yeah. So we send off the BISAC codes. You can do, I think, 3 to 5. I forget exactly how many. You can definitely do 3. It might be 5. BISAC codes that we send along to the retailers. And then they kind of use those to categorize as they will. We don't have a lot of fine-grained control yet for category support. But I love the idea. We're always pushing more ideas to retailers. And I would love to see better support with that in 2019.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting into the kind of futurist thing, but audio SEO is something I'm thinking a lot about. And there is, as far as I know, I mean, obviously Google's doing a lot of it, and the voice assistant stuff, they're doing a lot of voice recognition stuff. But our audiobooks have text. They have text associated with them. They are a book. So, I mean, I almost feel like we should be able to upload an ebook with the audiobook, and they search the metadata is the book. So instead of, that they actually can recognize a lot more with that. I mean, I want this for ebooks as well. I mean, there's no reason why they can't do this stuff. But do you see what I mean? Like that SEO around audiobooks. So someone's talking to their Alexa or their Google Assistant, and they say, find me now I've got all kind of, like a werewolf romance set in London, that would help find it, as opposed to just the very limited stuff we have now.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. Right now, BISAC code and description field are probably the only thing that they're indexing. Yeah, if they're doing both. The description is basically, if you're going for SEO, make sure you're writing a really good description. Look at what the big pubs are doing. They're stuffing a lot of stuff in there. And look at some of the top sellers and see what they're doing with their audiobook descriptions. They're limited to, I believe, 4,000 characters. I could be wrong on that specific metric. So you don't have a ton of space to work with to do a lot of excerpts or parts of the chapters or something really relevant to pull out. But definitely if you get an award or if there's any news, like the publishers are all putting that in there. Now there's a movie tie-in. Now there's a new award. It's up for an Audie. It's up for something. You can update your description at any time with Findaway Voices and republish it. So that's another piece of control that you can use to experiment and see if you want to try some SEO stuff in your description. You can try something for a couple months. You can change it for a couple months. You can kind of do an A/B test over that period of time. Or you can make 2 versions of your audiobooks, and you could have one description in one version and another description in version B, and you kind of send each version out to half the retailers. So maybe I'm going to send this description to Apple, this description to Google, and see if there's a noticeable difference in performance. And maybe swap them halfway through. All that control is available now. So the SEO stuff is great. Yeah, when somebody's searching for a book on your topic, the metadata is the product. Right? They might listen to the sample or something, but it's the metadata that's going to draw them in from the search engine to the retailer. So it's worth spending the time to make sure your description's really solid.
Oh, I could talk to you forever. You know that. But let's just come back on libraries, because I feel like libraries have been ignored a lot by indies. They were in the earlier days. People tried. I mean, you can get into libraries. Well, you've been able to get into through Smashwords into libraries for years. And of course, Overdrive is owned by Rakuten, which also owns Kobo. And Drafter Digital obviously do stuff into libraries. So there's lots of ways into libraries. But what you talked about there with audio is really, really interesting. But again, discoverability. Like, I don't have the bandwidth to go round, or to try and hit up every library, like in America, with a letter or how do you market or do you just try and market to customers of libraries to go and request stuff?
There's two ways to do it, because there's two main ways that I will recommend doing it, because there's two ways that libraries buy audiobooks. So again, there's the a la carte model, where the librarian is curating a catalog, and they're finding your book through some list or somewhere, or maybe you've done a letter to them, and they're choosing your book to have in their catalog. And generally speaking, they'll pay 2 to 3 times what a customer would buy at retail to have that right to circulate it. So you set your list price for retail to $10. You set it to $30 for libraries, and libraries are used to paying that for the right to circulate it. In that case, I like to recommend starting with local libraries, letting them know you're a local author, and they will almost always buy local content. So go to your branch library, go to your county library, go to your state library. Think of what local means in your context. A Seattle librarian may have a Pacific Northwest collection that includes somebody from Vancouver and includes somebody from Portland. No matter where you are in that range, Seattle might be local in the right context. So think broadly in terms of that, because librarians love featuring local content. So those are easy wins. The more scalable, broad approach of leveraging the cost per checkout model, where this is the Netflix model in libraries, where the whole catalog is open to patrons and the librarians do more of a merchandising role than a curation role. This opens up the possibility for direct patron marketing and starting to do ad campaigns or outreaches to your mailing list that say, my audiobook is available at your library. Right? When you use Findaway Voices, we're distributing to 12, 13 libraries. It's there. You don't have to worry about which particular system their local library uses. You can say, just go check out my book at the library. And they'll either, if they're not on a cost per checkout model, they'll request it from the librarian, which is a great call to action, because the librarian, when they get a request, will probably buy it. Or they'll start downloading it like crazy. It's free to them, and you get a couple bucks every time they do it. It doesn't matter if they finish the book in most cases. Just matters that they had the spark enough to download it or check it out. So that can be really, really powerful. And we've started to see some people really experiment with patron-driven marketing campaigns, which, when you're telling somebody, go listen to my book for free, it's a really compelling offer. It's about the most fun you can have with a marketing campaign is go listen for free and I get paid. Like win, 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 right?
Yeah.
We're seeing some authors with 20, 30, even 40% of their royalty checks come from library systems. Wow. So the ones that are working really hard at patron marketing are seeing it pay off in a big way. And Hoopla is another big one in the US. A lot of libraries use Hoopla. And we recently announced MLOL, which is a huge library system in Italy. They're in like 70% of the libraries across both schools, universities, and public libraries in Italy. And they're desperate for more non-Italian content. So English language contents can work really well in those systems. And we're just seeing this trend towards libraries being more and more impactful every day. And we're really excited about it.
Wow. Well, in that case, call to action, everyone. You can get Joanna Penn and JF Penn books in your library. So that's awesome.
If they're not there, ask the librarian to buy them.
There we go. Fantastic. No, I am excited about libraries. I think sometimes one of the issues with being an indie author, of course, is bandwidth with all the things that you want to do. Like you and I met in September, and I had and this is 5 months later now, when I'm like finally getting around, and I uploaded my books this week to Findaway. And I know everyone has their list. So, but libraries to me, like you say, can be win-win for the customer, because audiobooks are more expensive than ebooks. Even with a subscription, they're more expensive. So I think libraries are a really good idea. So we're almost out of time, but I always have a futurist segment, and you and I were talking a bit at Nink about this, and I wanted to ask you about what you think is coming. And I want to say in the next 2 to 5 years, maybe longer horizon, like what are you excited about? Like I went on Lyrebird .ai the other day, and I built myself a voice synth, which was just amazing. It wasn't brilliant, as in you could tell the difference, but it was still amazing that I could train an AI to speak like me already, and that they've done this for people. I'm also thinking about the impact of 5G and what that means to that, and also voice search and voice assistance. So those are some of the things I'm interested in. Any comments on those or anything else that you're excited about?
Yeah, so I'm a huge geek and I love this kind of stuff. So do we have the next 3-4 hours to talk about? Yeah,
totally. Totally.
Look, voice synth is probably one of the most interesting things to me. The ability to have a computer replicate a human sounding voice is going to have huge implications for a lot more than just audiobooks. But certainly audiobooks are going to be a big, I think, benefactor of it as the market changes, though. So I think in the meantime that there is even some potential for a new market to expand or be created from a different tier of audiobooks, for lack of a better term. I don't have the terminology right for this yet, but the thought is that a human narrated audiobook is an audiobook. And maybe there's a computer narrated audiobook that's marketed differently. It's not pretending to be an audiobook, so maybe it's half the price or a quarter of the price. And it's setting the consumer expectations right that, okay, this isn't a perfect performance. This is going to sound a little robotic in parts, but it's good enough that for $2, I guess I'll pick it up. And those things are not locked in time like human narrated performances, right? So, a human narrated performance, when you get it, if you find a typo or want to change a bit of the story, it's really expensive to go find that narrator again, sub out the words. You could make edits on the fly to your story and have it automatically updated in the audio versions. You could always have the most recent tech delivering your audio version. So as the computer voice gets better and better, your audiobook gets better and better as well. You can imagine a future like that that's really compelling for the audiobook industry. I don't think human narrated performances will ever be completely extinct, just like professional photographers are not completely extinct now, even though everybody has a great camera on their iPhone. There's a performance and an emotional connection with that I think will continue to persist for a very long time, if not forever. I always have trouble saying for anything.
Except I guess my thought there is, if I can synth my voice and you have a connection with my voice brand, and I write the book and I have my voice synth narrate it, then where does that lie on that spectrum that you're talking about? That's really, or I get, and this is really interesting for intellectual property rights for audio, because at the moment I think most people are signing away rights to audiobook rights, maybe single voice, or they might sign away performance or that type of thing. Whereas what you're saying is interesting, because it would be like you need to further talk about your rights in terms of human narration versus AI narration. For example, what if
it's the listener's choice who they want the narrator to be?
Exactly,
right? The book is just there, and I say, well, this book over here, I love it, but I love Joanna Penn's voice. I just wish I can just choose Joanna Penn's voice. Hers is up
brilliant,
there, and I can listen to any book in the world narrated by Joanna Penn, and maybe you, for offering your vocal profile, you get a little cut every time.
I get a license, or I license my voice to a publisher. Or that. I love that. And also, some people have preference for male, female voices, or an American voice or a British voice. So that could also be a parameter. Oh, when's that coming? Let's say, when's that coming? 5 years? 10 years?
Another one I wanted to point out was I think just the traditional audiobook production process will be really improved by technology too. So right now, when a human look at me, I'm so future, I'm already talking about narrators as humans. When a narrator records an audiobook, a really good narrator, it can take 3 to 4 hours just to get one of those finished hours of audiobook.
Yeah.
Of audiobook produced, right? So they're reading, they make a mistake, they have to back up and re-record it, and then in the editing room they have to take out the bad take and put in the good take and splice it all together so it's seamless. Imagine a teleprompter proofer machine all in one, or an iPad that as soon as you make a mistake, it's transcribing you as you talk. It knows you made a mistake because it knows the ebook, and so it flashes red and says, no, back up. Here's where you need to start again. And then it does the splicing automatically for you. I mean, a narrator could cut that down to almost real time or 1.5x recording time. And that has a lot of implications. One, the narrators' rates might go down because now they can record 200 books a year instead of 50, right? And for the same amount of money, they get a lot more portfolio work in. The production time is going to be reduced. So it's much easier and cheaper for you to do simul releases, because now instead of 6 weeks, it takes 2 weeks or 1 week or 2 days. And all of a sudden, all those ebook sales that you're losing by holding them while you're waiting for your audio to be produced is not nearly as painful, because the production cycle is quicker. I think tools like that are going to make the production process far more easy. And even if you think about the difference between 10 years ago making an audiobook and today, like, you're not renting studio time. You're not going to a huge professional operation that charges $200 an hour, which then your rate is on top of to cover that overhead. You know, the technology to record and have a home studio has gotten so much cheaper and so much better. And that's not slowing down. It's going to be even easier and cheaper for more narrators to get started in this industry. So that's the close to the 2 in the 2 to 5 year range.
I was going to say, because that's like that's a software as a service model. Someone's going to make that software, license it, and people are going to use it. So that has a much more immediate return on investment for that type of software development. Because I've just been doing this. I just recorded 3 short stories, and I've went through that whole process, recorded them, made mistakes, and then I've been editing them and then sending them for mastering, and like the whole blooming process. That sounds great. I would pay for that, like, right now.
Yeah, for sure. It's just a matter of time before.
It is, totally. So anything else you're excited about?
I'm interested in how self-driving cars affect the audiobook industry.
I was going to say that next.
So, and in that vein, maybe VR as well. So these activities that you're doing that require your eyes and your hands right now, but leave your ears free, are great times for audiobooks. What happens when you can take a nap or watch Netflix in the car? Does that commute time really change the audiobook industry in an interesting way? Or what happens when VR is for more than gaming and people are spending a lot more time in VR where they're using their eyes and their hands, but they have their ears free? Is that maybe a new leisure time, or, the 2050 commute is going to be in VR? And maybe that's a great time to get more listening in. What is the audiobook experience there? And is it supplemented with the environment? Is it supplemented with the text in an interesting way? All of those things are things that I love thinking about, and thinking about what the industry is going to be like because of those innovations.
No, me too. But I think, again, a more possibly immediate thing is, like, by 2021, I think it is, or 2022, when most of the world will then be on 4G, and the leapfrog technologies in most of the rest of the world, as in, take China, India, places where people have not gone desktop, laptop, they've gone straight to mobile. And since I feel like the explosion in audiobook listening has been mobile first, basically, that if we're looking at, in a couple of years' time, people are going to be on the internet with a phone, then it feels like the expansion in places other than America will be exciting as well. So if we're on these mobile devices and in these places, and many people want to listen to English, learn English, in that way, as well as speaking English. So I think that's another thing I'm excited about. It's just the expansion of, like, the internet and mobile speeds across the rest of the world.
I love it. There's going to be so much of more market for the audiobooks when that happens. It's going to change the industry completely. And that's why we have a really strong focus this year on international expansion. We're not sure exactly what the right bet is, so we're making all the bets. We want your audiobook everywhere that we can find it. And one of those or more of those are going to break out in a big way. And we want to make sure your audiobook is there when that happens.
Yeah. So I guess the message for everyone is, like, even if you're not creating your audiobooks now, like if you're not investing in audiobooks, don't sign away your rights to everything. Like, make sure because if some of this tech comes in, it will be cheaper to do audiobooks. I mean, like we've seen with ebook formatting. I mean, remember, like 5 years ago, ebook formatting was a nightmare, or you would pay loads for it. And now it's, you can pretty much do it for free, or use brilliant software like Vellum. So yeah, I think the message is, even if you can't do it now, build up your backlist and then be ready to do some of this stuff. But I think you and I will probably still be talking about this.
I hope so. I love this.
For a while. Right, so tell everyone, where can they find you and Findaway Voices online?
Sure. So our website is findawayvoices.com, and we have a blog that's pretty active as well at blog.findawayvoices.com. And we're also very active on Twitter and Facebook. You can find us at Findaway Voices. And so we try to keep it all pretty
yeah, it is pretty good. And we should say the integration with Draft to Digital. So if people are already with Draft to Digital, what should they do then?
So if you're already with Draft to Digital, you'll see a little icon next to your books where you can just click one button, and then boom, all your metadata has been transferred over to us. We create an account. We can get the process started really, really easy for you with just one click. They've made it really, really simple. And all of your metadata from your book is transferred to us. So you don't have to type it all in again. You don't have to worry about all of that. We can get you started really fast in the process. So if you're with Draft to Digital or Smashwords, we have integrations with both of them. It's really simple to get started with Findaway Voices from either of those platforms.
Yeah, and it's pretty easy anyway. So either way, people can check you guys out. Well, thanks so much for your time, Will. That was great.
Thank you. This was so much fun. Thanks for having me.